Smith is one of the most bizarrely constructed buildings that I have had the pleasure of working in.
The union was built when there was very few students, like 3,000 or 3,500 students, and now we have 10 times the number of students and visitors, and we have a different student body with different needs, and so we're trying to shoehorn programs into spaces that weren't built for them.
I think the purpose of this space is to bring in students more as like a community almost. It's hard, especially since we have such a large commuting population in the school.
I use the Casa Latina and the Multicultural Center a lot to just come here in between classes because of the location. It's really convenient. I do homework, I have my lunch, I utilize the computers, use it for printing, use it to do homework, check email.
The space is so small if we do not have enough computers, and students are sad. In fact, I feel sorry for them sometimes when they come in such a hurry to have their work done, and just to find out that there are not enough computers to get their work completed.
I have heard and then been in conversations with other students who are African American or Black that definitely want their own space where they can host events, to have conversations, challenging conversations that they might feel that are important to them, and also for Asian Pacific Islanders, definitely they have voiced that they want their own space as well. So I think it's just important that we listen to those voices.
When there's two new resource centers coming along and we're already fighting for space, I just don't know where we're going to put them, or like how great those spaces are going to be for these new resource centers, and what does that look like to people.
22% of the students on campus do have minor children, so we serve a pretty large population out of this little tiny space. Our lounge is about 350 square feet. It's pretty small, and trying to fit more than a few people back there at a time gets really crowded really easily. Storage space is really at a premium. Our storage space is actually next door in Newburgh, and so when we need supplies for events or things like that, we have to go over to another building to pick them up and then bring them back over here.
So this is a storage closet that was originally intended for the ballroom. We have, in the back room, we have a set of stairs that goes down to the backstage, and whenever anything happens in the ballroom, we hear it loud and clear, and the walls shake. Pictures have fallen off the wall. It gets pretty rough.
The QRC is a pretty multifunctional space. We use it for events and then also just for like daily uses. So folks come in here to access our space because we have a library here. They come and use our computers. Our space often serves as kind of like people's living room between their classes.
It is a little bit cramped sometimes because when they have huge events and they have a large library and a lot of couches and a lot of places to be, that it tends to be a bit small sometimes.
It becomes this like obstacle course of backpacks and people sitting, and it just becomes an issue of getting around the space, and especially folks using mobility devices. I think it's even harder for those folks to be able to access the space fully.
I do notice that people or students who have disabilities or in wheelchairs, that I find it very hard for them to access some of the areas.
We've heard from a lot of people that students are confused, that they get lost, that students also may feel unsafe using certain parts of the building at certain times.
We've had problems with infrastructure, with the electrical system, with sewer system.
There was a sewage leak in the kitchen. We had to go through Mark Russell basically here, and then James, his team member. It was originally just like leaking. When James came to fix it, there was a full-on burst at that point. And so that's what kind of shut the kitchen down for the last week and a half. We had a professional service come in and do the cleaning and all the biological testing, and we got our positive test results back, meaning we could open.
And those are things that students can't see, but But because we're not dealing with them in a large scale way, we keep putting band-aids on things, it just gets more and more and more and more expensive.
I oversee the day-to-day operations of the building and make sure that building repairs and maintenance and contracts are being upheld as needed. And I've been in the building working in one capacity or another for about the past 15 years. This kitchen was originally built in this capacity when the student body for the entire campus was about 3,000 students. Now it's about 30,000. You have to use a completely different elevator system in the building, depending upon whether or not you need to go to the mezzanine levels or to the regular floors. So you could have an event across the hallway in the ballroom and from your office in the third floor mezzanine, and you'd have to go down to the ground floor to get the elevator to come up to the third floor if you're rolling a cart or something. So it's not really optimally designed. So this is what you see when we stop at the loading dock in the guest elevator. People are just getting in the elevator, they're going up to the ballroom office, and all of a sudden it stops at the loading dock, which you can't smell this on video, but it's not pleasant. And yeah, this basically is the area that the fumes and the flies from just get right into the guest elevator. Here we have the elevator that goes to nowhere. This elevator used to be a functioning part of the building when it was originally built, but as phases were added on, it was decided that it was more expensive to keep this elevator running than it was to simply shut it down. So this elevator has been decommissioned. Because the building has been rebuilt and rephased so many times, there's a lot of these features that are just no longer relevant and that are just kind of clogging up the interior space of the building. There's stairwells that are the same way. A stairwell that was once a major thoroughfare in the building. People would climb in the stairwell to get to the various floors, but now is not really a feature of the building. It's just sort of still in use only as an emergency stairwell. But otherwise it's completely out of use, and is for the most part just kind of a liability of the building, because someone could be on their cell phone and accidentally walk out, setting off the alarm, tripping the alarm for the entire building, not realizing what they're doing.
Some of the challenges of being in the sub-basement are the lack of sun, the wonky heating and cooling system, the bad location in terms of visibility for students who might be curious about us, and most people don't even know where we are. They don't have an idea. They don't even have a clue that Smith has a sub-basement.
I don't even think a curious student really can find this space very easily. They will get they get buried and lost in the basement looking for us.
We designed the HVAC to accommodate the building in a certain way, and every time you reassign offices and tear down walls and make them into a lounge, or vice versa, you're changing the way the HVAC fundamentally interacts with the rest of the building, creating areas that will be too hot, other areas that are not getting enough heat or air conditioning. Because the building has been rebuilt and reshaped so many times, we're constantly having to readjust how air flows through the building. The elevators would stop running, so they would essentially be trapped here until they could get assistance from emergency personnel to leave the floor, which is another issue of this building, that most of it was built before ADA requirements.
If you're not on the first floor, then evacuation, if you're a person with a mobility impairment or a person with a physical disability, in an evacuation situation, you would go to one of the stairwells and call 911 and or ask someone who is evacuating the building to send up emergency evacuation assistance for you if you're not able to do that on your own.
It's a great sort of patchwork approach. It will solve a lot of these problems, but it doesn't really do anything about the long-term issue of a building that's just kind of like outlived its usefulness for a campus this size.
We have tried to push this building together and reconfigure something and go at small bursts instead of thinking holistically of how can we just solve all of the problems at one time and start fresh or semi-fresh.
A lot of the new structures and spaces that are going on or going up around campus have been really integrating this concept of universal design, which is that if you create the space with a variety or a diversity of constituents in mind, that you will inadvertently create space that is accessible to the majority of people. So creating, accessible restrooms, single-use restrooms possibly, or maybe just gender-neutral restrooms for everyone, because of course people with disabilities have, service providers or personal assistants of many genders too.
No matter what, we're going to have a giant price tag to fix this building, so we might as well add value to things that the students actually knowingly interact with on a day-to-day basis.
I think the university could, it's such a forward-looking institution, Portland State University is, and diversity and sustainability are right at the forefront of our mission goals, and yet the building is one that doesn't really facilitate any of the mission goals of the university because it was built at a different time.